Okay, we are officially live on Facebook.
Okay, good evening all. Welcome to the November meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors. We will go ahead and read the electronic meeting notice.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic emergency, this meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors is being held electronically, pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3708.2 A.3, the Continuity of Government Ordinance, adopted by the Alexandria City Council on June 20, 2020 to undertake essential business. All members of the board and staff are participating from remote locations through a Zoom meeting. This meeting continues to be held electronically, unless a determination is made that it is safe enough to be held in person, at the Alexandria Transit Company Boardroom, 3000 Business Center Drive, Alexandria, Virginia. Electronic access will be provided in either event. The meeting can be accessed via Zoom and Facebook, and recordings are posted on YouTube and the Dash website. Public comment will be accepted via Zoom. A Zoom registration link is available on the Dash website. Alternatively, requests for public comment can be made during the public comment period by utilizing the raise hand feature. This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you. Chair Kaplan.
Here.
Vice Chair Kleist.
Present.
Linda Bailey.
Present.
Larry Chambers. Randy Collins. Ian Greaves.
Here.
Matt Harris.
Here.
Jim Capsis. Jim Capsis. Hillary Orr.
Here.
Ajayesha Thomas.
Present.
Okay, Chair Kaplan, we've got quorum.
Larry had indicated he has childcare responsibilities tonight, so he will try to join us later, depending on how successfully he is at getting his kids to bed. And Brandy is running a little late, so we're expecting her shortly. We will now move into the public comment section of the meeting. We will first take any speakers who have pre-registered to make their remarks, and then I will open the floor if there are any members of the public who wish to be heard at that point. The rules are up on the screen. We have an hourglass that shows you your 3-minute time allocation. And per staff, you must be on Zoom in order to speak, and you may click raise your hand to request to speak, leave your hand up until you are called upon. Staff, do we have any pre-registered speakers?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We do have a few pre-registered speakers this evening. The first person that registered was Bob Gronenberg.
Thank you. Bob, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I walk around my neighborhood, I'm somewhat embarrassed to see the empty or nearly empty 36 A and B buses passing through Park Fairfax every 15 minutes, days, evenings, 7 days a week. And there are many reasons why ridership is so low, but I think one of the principal reasons is that the Line 36 does not connect to even one Metro rail station, not one. All the other dash lines connect to 1, 2, or even 3 stations. Yet Line 36 is possibly the only fixed route service in the DMV without a rail connection. I would be naive to believe that the latest delay in opening Potomac Yard Metro Station will be the last one. Of course, I hope I'm wrong. But just recently, Metro announced that the Rockville Canopy project would be further delayed due to glass-reinforced concrete panels damaged in shipment. That's the nature of these types of projects, and I don't think Potomac Yard is exempt. Now, I was in Chicago recently, where 2 Red Line subway stations, Lawrence and Berwyn, have been closed since May for long-term rehabilitation. The buses normally serving those stations were rerouted to other stations temporarily. Perhaps we too could show a modicum of flexibility and sensitivity and temporarily reroute the 36 buses to an operational metro station, such as Braddock Road, National Airport, or Crystal City, until the Potomac Yard Station opens. And to add insult to injury, the decision to deviate from the ATV plan and have Line 35 buses bypass Shirlington further limits transfer opportunities for 36 line passengers. The Shirlington Civic Association and I have been discussing this. We'll be happy to work with Dash on locating suitable bus stop space in Shirlington if that's the problem. So thank you for listening and hopefully realizing the lost opportunity that exists for line 36A and 36B. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. And I'm also reminded that you had sent me an email last month that I neglected to respond to about some of the transit stop accessibility issues that I had talked about mainly in Old Town, and that noting that those also extend to Park Fairfax. We'll be having some discussion about transit stop amenities and improvements and the process forward. And I certainly hope that we will be able to engage your civic association's support in remedying some of those issues as Dash looks to move forward to make those stops more usable.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. To your other point, I'll let staff jump in. I have been on the board. I was on the board when the AT9, which was sort of the predecessor of the 36, was created, and I had actually tried to lobby to get that bus to connect up to Crystal City, but that is not was not something that was deemed feasible, in part because of the number of buses that would be required to do that, and also the need for the cooperation of Arlington County, who has allocated their stop space based on the needs that they have and see for that station for Metro Bus, BART, and other service providers, and that wasn't something they were interested in entertaining. I would say that deviating would also affect residents of Potomac Yard and people who are going to the shopping center in terms of their ability to use that service. So I think we have to be sensitive and know that, although it's not serving a Metro Rail station, they are making connections that serve, significant mobility needs. But I will let staff weigh in if, as they went through that process. I know we did talk some about the 35 earlier this year when a representative from Shirlington came, and it sounded like that some of that had to do with Arlington County staff's willingness was to be able to provide, not willingness, but ability to provide space at the Shirlington Transit Center, which is very tight right now because they have a lot of service there. But I'll let staff weigh in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll recognize Martin Barno, Director of Planning, as he is intimately familiar with the logistical details here.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the line 36 is designed certainly to serve as a feeder to the Potomac Yard area. And when the Potomac Yard Metro Station opens, we believe it'll be a really beneficial route for that new metro station, that whole area over there as it develops. I think the challenge that we encounter with trying to modify the routing before the Potomac Yard Metro Rail Station opens next year is that there's a significant additional cost to routing it, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, up to Crystal City or National Airport or down to Braddock Road Metro. And that cost, I don't think, would be warranted given some of the other priorities that we have. I think that the connection to Potomac Yard is what we've envisioned for the ATV, regardless of the metro station status. There is value there, as you've mentioned. But again, it's the additional cost that we would see. And we do believe that there'd be a little whiplash too as well if we were to realign the route for a year and then realign it back when the metro station opens. So we're trying to kind of build a ridership base there instead of, and we think that would be harmed by changing it frequently.
Thank you, Martin. Next speaker.
The next speaker that has registered is Kevin Durkin.
Kevin, you're recognized.
Thank you. I appreciate having the time. I live directly on Seminary Road, and I want to thank Hillary's on, I know, and I want to thank the city for all the political capital and real capital that they put into making Seminary Road safer for everybody, to include cars, bicycles, pedestrians, and hopefully buses. But the buses don't seem to be on board with that. And it seems that every day multiple buses, and again, I don't know how many, I guess I could count some, but are going in excess of 35 to 40 miles an hour. Starts at 5 a.m. in the morning. I imagine they're trying to get to their routes or where they're supposed to be. But the speed limit is 25. And a 30,000 to 40,000 pound vehicle traveling in excess of the speed doesn't have the time to stop when there's a pedestrian or a bike in the road or a car that stopped at the light. I've called multiple times. I've tried to get a hold of Mr. Baker to no avail to talk about this, and it just seems to keep getting worse. I'd like to understand what the board and Dash staff can do about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Durkin. So Mr. Baker is on this call, and I think it would be helpful if you two could exchange contact information, or a member of his operations or safety staff can follow up. I do want to just clarify, because I mean that road would be used, the routes, the buses that are serving Seminary, at least the portion of Seminary, well, through most of the city, would be Dash buses, but there may be other buses from other providers such as Metro that are using that road to access from yards to get to the station, and we wouldn't have direct access over or jurisdiction over WMATA issues. So I just want to clarify if these are Dash buses that you're seeing, or if it's a mix.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, we hear you.
There's very few WMATA buses. It's majority Dash buses, and the worst offenders seem to be the express buses because they're express and the ones out of service. As I said, it starts at 5 in the morning, goes through the day. During the day, it's a little bit better during the daylight time. And then once 4 o'clock hits, it gets worse again. And the problem with it is that the buses cause like a train effect. And so you've got a Dash bus going 35 to 40, 45 miles an hour. You've got the rest of the cars behind them trailing along. And it's just not very safe. And I appreciate your attention to it. Thank you.
All right, well, we have your contact information. I know staff will commit to following up with you. I certainly we are very proud of our safety record, and that's something, if there are concerns, they need to be addressed. And I appreciate you coming to the meeting so that we can facilitate that connection. Thanks very much.
Safety, and one last comment, and I appreciate it. Safety and not having an accident is one thing, but speeding, in excess of the speed limit's a different thing. It doesn't get linked into a safety violation. So thanks very much, and I appreciate all you're doing, and I really like the free Dash buses. Thanks.
Thank you. I agree with you. Next speaker.
Mr. Chair, the next person that registered was Denise Rabadi, but it doesn't appear that she's actually in the meeting this evening, but she did provide comments ahead of time. So I will summarize, and then of course we'll provide these comments to Beth at the conclusion of the meeting. The summary of Denise's comments were that what used to take her 1 bus ride in Old Town now takes 4. So she wanted to know if there were going to be any changes to the bus routes.
Do we have specifics on what her trip is, or?
She said the AT5. She said with the AT5 gone, what used to take 1 bus ride now takes 3 to 4.
Okay, would somebody in customer service be able to follow up with her?
I will certainly forward this information to them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the final registrant was Francine Carrera, who does not appear to be online this evening either. She was having some scheduling issues with line 35, but I have actually already reached out to her to see if I can help with that issue.
Thank you, Whitney. So we'll pause now and ask if there are others on the call who did not pre-register who wish to be heard. Again, please click the raise hand feature in Zoom. We'll pause for a minute to see if anyone requests recognition. Do we have any speakers? No.
We don't see any hands.
I'm going to ask, in last meeting too, we did have a complaint that came before the board that I know staff was going to follow up on. If we could, in our next month's meeting packet, just get a brief update as to how these inquiries and public comment were handled, and we'll kind of make that our process going forward, just so we can understand how staff has addressed those issues. And we appreciate speakers who come forward and raise concerns as well as compliments about that. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. We'll move into item 2, which is approval of the meeting minutes from our October meeting. They were included in the board packet. Are there any revisions to those minutes? If not, I'll call for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the minutes from our October meeting.
Moved by Matt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Steve. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. We'll move into item 3, chair report. I have, my report is very short tonight. Just to note that we had an executive session on the agenda. We are not going to be having that executive session tonight. We will instead have a session in December. I will be, Hillary and I are working through some questions related to the topic of that executive session, and I will share an update with the board when we're ready and make sure that you have all the materials you need well in advance of that session. We'll go ahead and move on to the TNS report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
I was having slight issues with my testing, so that's great. Good evening, nice to see you all. I'll just dive into my update and please feel free to stop me if you have questions. First item on the TNS update is the Alexandria Mobility Plan, which you all heard about a few different times from the project manager, but the plan was adopted this past in October unanimously by council. And so this will replace the transportation chapter of the city's master plan. So it's very exciting for TNES. It gives us a lot of really great strategies to work toward. Next item is Alex Moves. This is a survey that the city tries to do every 2 years, and it's basically a multimodal. It's a survey on multimodal transportation trends and preferences across the city. It builds off 2 past surveys. We did the first one, I believe, in 2016, the second one in 2018, and it helps to identify trends over time. So we certainly learn things each time we do the survey, so it does shift a little bit, but we have been trying to get some information to look at trends, and a lot of it's about, we know that there is the state of commute survey that COG does, and for the whole region. This is really a supplement to that, and it also tries to get to how people travel around, not necessarily for commute, but for all of their trips. So we do a randomly selected, statistically significant survey throughout Alexandria, but this year we have an open participation version of the survey. So that the link is in the notes, and that is available to all Alexandria residents if they want to provide information, and that's open through November 20th. If you are interested in the survey on our website, we also have the results from the 2016 survey and a presentation from the 2018 survey as well. So we were going to do this in 2020. Obviously, COVID pandemic really impacted travel behavior. So we pushed it 1 year. So now we're at 2021. And this server, it helps to inform some of our capital projects and our priorities and different transportation studies, as well as provide some performance measurement data for our mobility plan and the pedestrian and bicycle chapters of the transportation master plan. And I went in, I took the survey, and it's definitely this year, I feel like it asked the best questions that it has over the past 3 years. So I'd encourage you to go in and take that. Next is the Metro train derailment. Just an update on this. I'm sure you all know about this, but the WMATA, we're still experiencing reduced levels through at least November 15th. Likely longer. Today, as of today, I believe the yellow and blue lines were running at about 30-minute headways. So we're getting daily reports from WMATA on that, but they are working to make sure that their cars are safe and reliable, and trying to build back up that service. I have an update on bus service and ridership. So in addition to the new Dash network, Metrobus has also increased their service. They increased it in September with the introduction of some 12 and 20-minute networks, which supplement the new Dash network nicely, particularly along Duke Street. The 28A has increased service to join the 12-minute network. And then the 29K/N on Duke Street also joined the 20-minute network. And they saw an increase in ridership of almost 37% on that route, and about 25% on the 28A. So that's about 4,000 daily riders in the 28A. So it's quite a bit. And let's see, Metrobus. So they usually do make minor service changes on a quarterly basis. They weren't planning on making anything in December, but due to driver shortage, they are going to have to make some cuts to service in Alexandria starting around the holidays in December to ensure that they are able to deliver their scheduled service. Next on my list is transaction. So this is the long-range plan from the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, NVTA. This is a plan that the city must submit projects into this plan to be competitive for certain grant funds. The projects must be included in transaction. So we have been working with NVTA to make sure that all of the projects, including Dash projects, are included in this document. Over the summer, NVTA conducted a survey to get some feedback on travel behaviors and transportation needs and priorities. And they had some interesting findings. More than 2,300 people actually took the survey, and the results showed that improved travel time reliability is a priority, no matter where you reside in Northern Virginia, and that people are seeking multimodal options, and that they want to see a reduction in traffic. So no surprises there. Those are typically things we hear, but I think it also supports investment in transit. We also found that the factors that most affect mode choice are trip distance, travel time reliability, traffic congestion, and access to frequent transit. Again, supporting a lot of the projects that we have moving forward. So this is it's about a 2-year process. I've listed the schedule in the meeting notes, but the MBTA committee is right now they're providing input on how to weigh the performance measures for the plan. And the committees have endorsed the following, well, they've endorsed the goals and objectives and measures that I listed in the notes, with the key goals being mobility, accessibility, and resiliency. With that, I'm happy to take any questions on any of those items.
All right, Hillary, I have one. Well, it's one about the Metro Rail derailment update. Is the 30-minute headways about the best that service is going to get until they begin to restore the 7,000 train cars?
I am not totally sure. Josh or Martin might be more tuned into that. I know that those are just for the yellow. So actually it's 20 minutes on the green and yellow line. So yellow line is doing a little better, and then 30 minutes on the blue, orange, and silver. I am not sure. We get 3 things every day. It seems to be about that time, but it's the last week they removed 32 rail cars. So, I think they're just trying to get through their safety protocol and hopefully get the cars back in service, but I'm not sure. I don't know if Josh or Martin has more information on that.
Go ahead, Josh.
No, sure, Mr. Chair. I recognize the importance of that question, and I think many are asking the same question. I don't even know that Metro is really able to speak to that, but I would say that from the interactions that I've had, there is a desire to get as much of the old fleet that is still operational out there to relieve some of these pressures and to get more frequency. But I think that there's an intentional I think they're intentionally not really saying a lot at this point. And I in those same shoes would probably be doing the same thing, because I think it is probably a disservice to the riders to say that you're going to do something and then find out you can't. I think it's better to say, this is all we can do right now. And then if we can find ways to do better, I think they are definitely trying to find those ways. Martin may know more from the planning side as far as his communications with them, but that's really, I think, probably what most of us are hearing.
Josh and Hillary, you guys have covered it all. I was just going to note that we have seen yellow line service up to every 20 minutes in the last week or so. For reference, the typical schedule is every 10 to 12 minutes, but we've seen every 20 minutes. So it's getting slightly better, but still not, close to where it normally would be.
All right, well, that's encouraging. And the other question I have is, so noting the 11C, which is a kind of truncated 11Y that used to run Mount Vernon up to into the District of Columbia and make numerous stops at kind of offices, cut back to be the service that just took people from Fairfax County up the Parkway to Metro. But when we look at issues like this, where we have a sustained period of time when we have Metro service, rail service, especially during rush hour, that is really not adequate to cover the people who are riding it, it makes you wish that we had more redundancies in our system. And the 11Y certainly was one of those, because you could actually cross the river on a bus, and that's very difficult. I think there's only one route, and it's from Arlington, that parallels the Orange line, Orange and Silver lines, that would let you actually get into DC in a one seat ride. And so just wonder if, from staff's perspective, as we're planning and working with Metro, is there a desire as people return to the office to bring the 11Y back in the form that it used to be, or is that the 11C sort of what we think we're going to have going forward long term?
Well, I know that this has been a topic of discussion and certainly a priority for our mayor. He has made it clear to WMATA that we do want to see as a city a return of some of the 11Y service. Now, I don't know what WMATA will do with that, but he has made that clear that that's important for Alexandria.
Could we help on that?
I don't think it would hurt.
Okay, so perhaps a letter when WMATA is doing their budget process for next year?
Yes.
Okay. But if you could keep us apprised of when would be the appropriate time to send that, I think that would be something that we as a board should consider doing.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions for Hillary? All right, well, Hillary, I appreciate you doing double duty and presenting on the next topic, the transit access and amenities and ADA compliance at bus stops.
Josh, do you want me to share mine?
Yeah, see if you can go ahead and share your content now. I've stopped mine.
I'll see that.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. Great. The chair and some others had requested an update on our transit access and amenities program, and also just in general about ADA compliance at bus stops in the city. So we put together this presentation to just go over kind of our process and the different programs that address that and what our plans are moving forward. So just for a little bit of background and kind of where this lives, because it has certainly moved around a little bit in tests as we've done some reorganization. So, we have the broader department, then we have our transportation branch, and then we have the transportation planning division that coordinates with Dash and WMATA. And so within transportation planning, we have a lot of the programs that I'm going to kind of touch on tonight. The Streets program, Vision Zero, a number of capital projects, regional coordination with WMATA and Dash, but also MBTA and VTC lives here. Our transit planning folks and BRT team is here, and then long range planning and development review. So transit stops and access and ADA touches on pretty much all of the programs within this division. So we did do a bus stop, or should say assessment in 2018. So this was pre-New Dash Network. And to be honest, we have not updated it since. We looked at ADA, if the bus stop was ADA compliant, if there were benches, if there were shelters, trash cans, and about 140 stops were not ADA accessible for one reason or another, which is about 18%. Again, this was 2018. We have done a lot of work through a number of different projects that I'll kind of touch on. But our plan is actually to update this spring. When we started diving in and realized that we had not updated this list, we thought that a good project to partner with some universities would be to get some students to do a project for us and do a bus stop assessment, tie it into GIS, have it mapped, have a tracking mechanism for us when we make improvements, and then we can also tie that to ridership as we prioritize where we want to make our investments, and also looking at things like our equity areas and kind of weighing that. So once we have it all mapped and prioritized, I think that will really help us move forward and get to some of these last stops. So the issues are typically curb ramps, narrow sidewalks, there's parking permitted, so the bus stop can't pull to the curb, or there's no concrete pad. We address the issues from a number of different approaches. Our capital projects, our traffic and parking board has given us administrative approval doing the parking. We have a complete streets program that I'll touch on a few of the ways we address it through that program, and then redevelopment. So just starting with some of our capital projects, transit access and amenities is a capital project that we have had for a while. We've gotten funding throughout different years, and this is really for bus shelters and site improvements. Right now we have about $2 million through FY23, and it's this particular project also this is really, we wanted something expensive, easier to maintain. When we have these custom panel and there's a lot of challenges. We also have a lot of issues with right-of-way, and that's why we don't have bus shelters at a lot of locations. And so we are looking for some bus shelter models of various sizes so that we can fit smaller shelters in areas and at least get something in some of these areas where we don't have the right-of-way. And this phase one is nearly complete. Phase two is really about site design. We have an RFP that's out for bid right now. We're looking at 86 locations, and we'll probably choose 30 to 40 stops to design from those 86. And that will occur this winter and throughout 2022. And all of the designs will ensure ADA accessibility of those stops. So this is the photo is an example from our last round of installs. And this is on Duke Street. But phase three is then construction and installation. So that would take place in hopefully 2022, but more likely in 2023. That's one of our capital projects that's really focused on the key goal of that is focused on bus stops. We've had a couple projects on Mount Vernon Avenue. So one is complete. This is where we looked at Mount Vernon from about Commonwealth to Braddock and installed bus bulbs in a number of locations. But through that project, we also upgraded other bus stops, removed parking to make sure they were accessible. And so just ensured that all of the stops along that corridor were accessible. And then we have an upcoming project on Mount Vernon North. So this is Alexandria, where we're looking at safety measures at a lot of intersections, but there are also bus stops at those intersections, and we would make improvements at those locations with that project. And looks like Ian has a question.
Yes, could you go back 2 slides where you, one more. Yeah, yeah, go forward. Could you, when you talked about choosing 30 to 40 stops, I think it's the other slide before that. Oh, how did you, right, there you go. How do you prioritize your choices?
So they'll assess a lot of locations. We look at things like ridership. We'll look at right-of-way. So do we even have space to put in a bus shelter? And we'll just look at the overall site, and we'll look at equity areas and then try and determine which ones are the most feasible and have other characteristics that would warrant doing the putting in new shelters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then our one other capital project we have is bicycle parking at transit. And so with this project, we are installing bike racks at bus stops to improve access to transit. We're looking at approximately 120 locations and looking at different types of racks we can install, but also with some of these, upgrading the concrete pads and putting in some fixed stations and just making sure that those are accessible as well if we can with that project. The Complete Streets program is another way that we update our bus stops. So the program coordinates very closely with our street resurfacing. So when we resurface roadways, we try and make sure that when we're doing the concrete work to upgrade programs, so we're also upgrading bus stops and putting in bus pads where we can. We also upgrade crosswalks, medians, and signage with the Complete Streets program to improve accessibility to get to improve access to the bus stops. We also have a number of safety projects. A lot of them kind of fall within the Vision Zero program, but also some are safe routes to school or just generally areas where we know we have issues where we do other things like putting in leading pedestrian intervals, or sometimes we're installing sidewalks. And if there's a transit route, we'll upgrade the bus stop and make sure it's ADA compliant as well. But this is really about making sure people can walk and get to the bus stops. We also have we get a number of community requests through online and try and prioritize those as well. Yeah, Matt.
Thanks, Hillary. On the corner of Prince and West, there used to be these sort of stanchions, these flexible things that were up in the road at the intersection. It made it harder for cars to turn right, which was appreciated for pedestrians, but they're gone. But the cement foundation or footprint still there. Are they going to be replaced, or was that just temporary? We originally installed quite a few of those when we first put the project in, and there was a little bit of backlash about the unsightliness of them. So we did remove some of them, which I actually think, it makes sense. We didn't need quite as many. They are a maintenance nightmare. We just wanted to make sure we had enough out to make it safe for people to cross. I'm not sure what's out there now. A lot of times they are damaged, and then it just takes a while to get them replaced. If there are zero out there, we should be replacing them. But on Commonwealth Avenue, which is where this kind of design picture is on the screen, we are experimenting with a different type of barrier that's lower to the ground, works better for fire and plowing and all of the street maintenance things. We're getting made fun of quite a bit for those because they're black and white stripes. They're called zebras or armadillos, and there's all kinds of jokes about them, but they seem to be working pretty well. So you might see some of those. Okay. Lastly, through redevelopment. So we have on all of the divisions within transportation, we're reviewing development plans as they come in and making requests of new development for bus stops, new bus shelters, new amenities, and what is required of those developments, really depends on the size of the development. I think having a new model of bus shelter will really help, because when we have a really expensive shelter and we're asking them to put that in, that contribution is competing with things like affordable housing. So if we have a less expensive option, I think we're going to be able to get more in with redevelopment. But we typically been pretty successful when the streets are redone to make sure we get nice bus stops with amenities and that they are ADA compliant. With that, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Questions for Hillary? Well, Hillary, I want to thank you for putting this together at the request that we made at the maybe it was the September meeting. This is, especially now with the new Dash network, it's such a priority to make sure that the stops, many of which now have more service than they did before, are usable for all segments of the community. And Josh and I'll share with the rest of the board, had a conversation as we were preparing for this meeting, and Josh and Stephanie had been at one of the transit liability pool meetings, and we're reviewing some old claims that, Josh, I believe were made on our system, right? The ones that you had shared with me. Yeah. The claims involved individuals who were alighting from buses in wheelchairs and were injured because the operator was really not able to pull up to the curb and provide a safe way for the individual to alight. The environment was so inhospitable, and there was injury to people, and our transit liability pool was having to pay out damages for that. So it's really about a lot of different things, including some financial risk that comes with having an environment that is inhospitable for people. Not to mention that doesn't encourage people to use buses. And so I'm really glad that there will be an opportunity to, well, that we have a number now of how many stops are actually inaccessible, because I didn't know if it was 25 or if it was 300. So it's nice to know what we're dealing with, and that we'll have an inventory. And I know you have some resources that will be coming in the spring that will enable you to make that update so that that information can be shared ultimately with the DASH staff. So the stops that are served just by DASH, that there can be some review of those stops. And so some decisions maybe can be made about those stops in advance of us beginning to look at where and how should we go about trying to get some additional parking removed to help move this process along. And I think our board's championing of this is very important because, Hillary, as you shared with me, staff can go and make administrative requests to traffic and parking to have the, or can administratively remove parking based on traffic and parking board's authorization to do that. But that, it's tricky when you run into backlash from the community, and when it's citizens who oversee and advocate for a transit system who are coming and speaking to those needs. I think we may be able to make further headway in the community. So that's one of the reasons why we have this presentation now, and why we're going to be pursuing this when the data set is available and can be shared with our staff. And so I look forward to some more robust conversations about how we can be most helpful in trying to improve those stops. But also kudos to all of you on the Complete Streets program who are making efforts to improve the stops and ensuring that this is reviewed as part of resurfacing and other development projects, because it's incremental, but it's making a difference. And it's really great to see some of those after pictures and how the environment has improved. So I thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it just occurred to me too, I think, any support from the DASH board, but also from the DASH rider advocacy group, I think would go a long way when we're looking at some of the parking removal as well.
Maybe this is a presentation that group would be beneficial for them to hear as well. So it's just something to think about as we
yes,
go forward.
I mean, the Commission on Persons with Disabilities as well. So I think we could kind of figure out a nice path forward with reasonable expectations, but having support from the various groups would go a long way. So appreciate that.
Absolutely. All right, well, thank you very much. We have an opportunity to every board meeting for members of our members who are on other boards, commissions, and community groups to share updates related to that would be of interest to DASH and transportation. So I'll open the floor if there are any updates. All right, hearing none, we'll move into the general manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Josh Baker, General Manager. Good to see you all. This evening, I have a number of updates, but I wanted to start with one that I used to do semi-quarterly with the board prior to the pandemic. So it's been quite some time since I've dedicated just a few minutes to update you on some of the events and activities that are going on within DASH with the staff, through my offices, and others. I just think that it's always important for you as a board to know a little bit about some of what's going on within the organization and external to the organization. So I just wanted to highlight a few of those. They are in your packet with details, but certainly we've been very pleased and appreciative of the recognition that we're receiving nationally, as well as locally, about our efforts surrounding fleet electrification, the new network, and our Fare Free program. Truly, it impresses me when you hear from other transit systems, communities, schools, public officials, about how much a program like this interests them and further what they're trying to do. So we're really pleased to be a leader in that. We've received a number of recognitions, some of them listed here from national publications, Mass Transit Magazine, Business View. We recently also had a bus at the US DOT offices for an electrification event. And there were some pictures and a video taken with the FTA administrator as well as the Secretary of Transportation. So we're very proud and pleased for that. And we know that it goes a long way in helping to carry the message of the importance of these programs. Some of the things we've also been doing is trying to partner with and be an advocate with agencies and organizations throughout our region. I mean, all of you are familiar with NVTC, Northern Virginia Transportation Commission. And we've actually had 2 presentations with them recently surrounding our electrification and our zero emission bus program. Most recently, I spoke with the commission about our program, and they were quite excited and have actually requested that the state work to form and fund a program whereby all of the transit systems in the region can come together under one roof to talk about the things we've learned and where we are and where we're going next with it. We were very proud to see that we were the farthest along in it of anyone. And the commission really appreciated the fact that we were being transparent, sharing the information about what we're learning. And we want to continue to do that. I think that's a really important part of partnerships in transportation. Because we are the leader in this, we want to make sure that we're sharing both the pros and cons of what we're doing and how we've continued to navigate those. I also had the opportunity to speak with a class at the University of Maryland, Ethical Policy and Social Implications of Science and Technology. The course was spending a lot of time talking about public services, public infrastructure. And the professor reached out and asked if we could spend some time talking with that class. It was a really engaging time. And I felt like I was back in school because I was running from one building to the other trying to find the class. So I embellished myself a little bit, feeling the good old days of college. But we're just really proud to see that as far as courses going on, locally within our universities, they're looking at the importance of transit and transit equity. We also had an opportunity to partner with the Greater Richmond Transit Company, and currently we're working with the Metropolitan Regional Airport Authority here in the DC region, as both are exploring not only electrification, but in Richmond as one of the first systems in Virginia to implement bus rapid transit lines, along with the one that we have, obviously, along Route 1, looking at how bus technology and buses can serve to inform these programs. And we believe that the partnership here will also help us to have information as Alexandria continues to pursue these programs. Last but not least, internally, we've been spending a lot of time working with the staff to engage them. As you know, throughout the pandemic, this was one of the biggest challenges we had. And we've worked really hard to keep our team informed, to hear from them and work with them. So we've continued to hold our quarterly meetings. This is a normal standard industry practice to have a quarterly safety meeting under which every employee is required to attend. I just thought the board would be interested to know that we've adapted to the new environment, whereas the previous meetings required every single individual to come in person to attend one of potentially 4 or 5 meetings that were held over the course of the week. Because of the technology we've installed in the DASH facilities, we can now present these meetings once or twice, record them, post them through our employee portal and through our e-learning system. And employees are required to review this information and to follow up with us if they have questions. So it just provides maximum flexibility and ensures that people feel safe, that they're able to attend if they so desire to. But if that doesn't work for them, that they have the option of still satisfying receiving the information and participating as a part of the sharing of information and ensuring that they are kept up to date on our safety practices, our customer service practices, and any other information that's coming from the organization. So just a lot going on here to just keep our teams informed and engaged. Yes, Matt.
Yeah, Josh, I was stalking you somewhere on social media and I saw you made some comments, and I don't know where, about the performance of the electric vehicles on hills and during the winter. How serious of a problem if it is at all, and what are you going to do to correct it?
It's an interesting one.
Now, you've never asked that question before.
I have no hidden agenda, Jim.
I'm just
the cat's out of the bag.
So, you know, that actually is an Alex Now article that was written in by someone who attended, I believe, the NVTC presentation I made. And in that presentation, I was presenting both the pros and cons of what we've experienced early on in our program. I think it's taken a little bit out of context. The reality is that the biggest issue we have with battery capacity is for heating. The comment that I made about hills was simply stating the fact that electric vehicles do best in urban environments where it's stop and go. And it does require a lot more energy for an electric bus to push, particularly a full load up a major hill. Frankly, I don't think that in Alexandria, that's really a big contributor to what we're dealing with. It was more a cautionary tale for localities that might deal with very hilly terrain and might need to incorporate that into their service planning. The other thing that I was mentioning there about the heating, and it's something that we're working with, and I'm sure Jim, obviously, as long as he's been involved in the board and prior to the board, has been engaged in this and is familiar. But for the rest of the board, heating is the biggest energy drain of an electric vehicle. And there's innovation going on the vehicle side, the car side, utilizing heat pump technology, much of the same that you use to heat your house. But we haven't seen that same innovation come along as quickly on the bus side, and we're looking for that. And so part of what I was saying there was not only is that a challenge for us, but it's something we're engaging in our partnerships with the manufacturers to push for. And I think it's possible. And if they can solve this problem, it will go a long way in changing how our energy is consumed on our buses, particularly in the cold climates. I will also just state for the record, there's some inaccuracies in that article about the timing. So if you did read that and saw different years than what you've been told, know that what I've told you is correct, and what I said there is correct. It was, I think, some typographical issues with the article, but good questions. And just again, you know, I feel like it's just important that we all work together and we talk about everything that's going well and the challenges we're having so that people understand what we're having to navigate to make sure the program is successful long-term.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to, you know, confront you or put you on the defensive, but
No.
I have no reason to doubt what you're saying rather than Alex now. So thanks for the explanation.
Well, thanks for mentioning it. I appreciate you bringing it up, because certainly I want to make other members aware in case that article was to float in front of them. Our timeline is still the same timeline we've all committed to. It hasn't changed from that. Okay, so going along here related to COVID-19 and our vaccination efforts, super pleased here. We're at 91% vaccinated. We're seeing that percentage tick up gradually week over week. We expect it to tick up even more. We have a number of individuals currently getting vaccinated, and we're really down to the last set of just a handful of people. Many of them are part-time. Many of them may not be working very frequently at Dash. But we are getting 100% compliance in our testing requirements. And when we are not, we are sending staff home. We're going to maintain that. We're glad to see that we are fully aligned with the new regulations put out by the Biden administration through OSHA, and OSHA is the enforcing agency for these requirements. So we are fully in compliance with that, with the program we have in place before the guidelines were even announced. So no changes are necessary. I will note, though, that guidelines for employers as far as surface sanitation, disinfecting procedures, and cleaning procedures have changed. And so we're following that guidance from the state. So this update is related to our TRIP program, the Transit Ridership Incentive Program. On October 19th and 20th of this year, the Commonwealth Transportation Board, CTB, in short, met for their planning workshop. The Department of Rail and Public Transportation presented this public information as to the recommendation of how to award the TRIP program funds. The synopsis here is that we are very, very pleased to see that largely our requests have been recommended for funding. And we anticipate that the CTB, as they often do, will align with the DRPT's recommendations here and complete this, this funding. I will note, I believe it's on the next slide here, a little bit of the variation of what we applied for compared to what was awarded. You'll see here on the table at the bottom that in the first year, we're about $100,000 short of our application. And then the second year, that increases. You will notice though in FY24, we're awarded a little more than we requested. And in the end, over the course of that 3 years of funding, we're again, very, very close. Now, here's what I will say about this. We have been in close communication with DRPT. We recognize, and they recognize, that there are more applications for low and zero fare programs now than when the TRIP program was originally set up, or than was anticipated when they set up the program. The program has two parts to it. One is regional routes or regional commuter routes, and the other is low and zero fare programs. The low and zero fare program is the one that was oversubscribed, and there is a significant amount of money left over in the regional routes because many of those are commuter services that aren't running because of the pandemic. So I'm working closely with the department and with the city and legislatively to see if we can get this changed. And if that were to change in the next year or two, we would likely see, particularly in year 2, that money restored. And so we would receive our full award. It's hard to say whether that will actually happen, but I just want you all to be aware that that's something that I'm working on and I've already had some communications on. But as far as the first year is concerned, that immediately resolves the entirety of the current deficit that we've been talking about since the beginning of the fiscal year. And we're very pleased to see that in future years, it will go a long way in helping to reduce the subsidy increase obligated by the city. I'll keep you all informed as that process moves forward. The last item here in my report is an action item. For those of you who may not have been on the board when we've previously done this, there are a number of organizations throughout the country, particularly along the East Coast, that serve to preserve transit heritage and history. Many of them like to have displays within their collection of transit vehicles that have served communities such as Alexandria. We do have a vehicle that is displayed at the Virginia Museum of Transportation. As you all may recall, or some of you may recall, that museum suffered a significant fire several years ago. The board did collect and contribute some funds towards the efforts to restore what they could of their collection. We have received 2 letters of request from curators of these museums. One is from the Museum of Bus Transportation in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is arguably one of the largest organizations that supports and preserves transit history and heritage. And the other from the Friends of the New Jersey Transportation Heritage Center, also here on the East Coast. Now, these requests are for us to donate decommissioned dash buses, which normally would be sold for aftermarket scrap or potentially in some cases to be repurposed. Oftentimes we'll see them purchased through a bid process and then shipped elsewhere, either in the country or in the world, to be used, to continue to be used in other services. We think this is a program that would align well with not only preserving and showcasing Dash's history, but also ensuring that these vehicles are not ending up in regular revenue service elsewhere in the world. And it has very little, if any, impact on any kind of fiscal matters involving the disposition of these buses. These are not all of the buses that we'll be getting rid of, but 2 of them, if the board so chooses to approve this request. So that is an action item which I will turn over to the chair to further discuss if necessary, and the board may choose to take action on this if so desired.
Thank you, Josh. And as you mentioned, we have done this in the past for other organizations, and it's kind of cool when you can go somewhere and see a part of Dash history in a museum. And these are both very worthy organizations. We can have some discussion, but if members are comfortable, I can call for a motion.
I move, but then I'd like a little discussion as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay, well, Matt, you've moved. Let's see if we have a second.
Second.
Okay, Ian and Matt, do you want to be recognized?
Yes, please. Josh, do we have any right after we've given it to them? In other words, what if they turn around and repurpose it or sell it and don't remove our name and it winds up, with some bad PR somewhere down the road?
It's a very good question. We can certainly stipulate the conditions of the donation. And we can stipulate that requirement that it is only to be maintained as a part of the collection and not to be resold or repurposed under the Dash brand. Typically, when we surplus buses, we will pull decals off of them, identifying the bus. However, we don't repaint them or anything like that. So we have seen blue and yellow striped buses show up elsewhere in the country. But to your point, we make sure that our name is not being presented in an adverse way, and we can stipulate that in the donation authorization. Both of these are registered museums, so certainly, I think very comfortably legally as to their organization's purpose and incorporation. So I would feel comfortable stipulating that to them.
You want to amend your motion, Matt?
Sure. I move to accept the proposal with the stipulations that Josh has just mentioned.
Okay. And Ian, you're still seconding? Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no further questions on my general manager's report, I will provide a brief fiscal report here. I'm hopeful that this will be the last month I'll be doing this because I am pleased to let you all know that we have extended an offer which has been accepted to a very qualified individual to join the Dash team as our new Director of Finance and Administration. That individual begins December the 6th at Dash, and so I will formally introduce them to you and speak with you all about them at the December meeting. They will quickly be learning the processes, but we're very excited. The applicants were screened on a multi-stage process, as one would expect of a high-level position such as this, and we had participation from Evan Davis, our former Director of Finance, and Hillary served from the city as part of the review team for this position. So we were very thankful, and I want to publicly thank Hillary for her time representing the city and helping us to vet the individual for this position. So we're looking forward to them joining us. So with that said, I will simply provide a brief update here. The financials are included in the packet with the detailed information. Very little has changed from last month, with the note here that I would point out that we are confirmed that the 102X, the express service that is funded by the Department of Defense to and from the Mark Center, is discontinuing as of well, Martin's here. Martin, help me out. I've just blanked on when that discontinues, if it hasn't already.
End of November.
End of November. Thank you. I appreciate you helping me out there. So end of November, this contract will cease service, and we've accounted for that loss of revenue in our budget, current fiscal year and in future fiscal years. We are continuing to implement cost controls in all areas possible and necessary. But we are pleased to state, as I mentioned before, that the TRIP program award is sufficient and then some to cover this projected deficit in the budget as is current. As I mentioned before, the new Director of Finance will quickly spend some time with Evan Davis to learn not only about what's been going on and how we get things done here, but also to be brought up to speed on these estimates and these challenges so that that person can continue to inform the board as we move throughout the fiscal year. So, Mr. Chair, if it pleases the board, I will move into the next item of discussion, which is item number 5E in your board packet, starting on page 15, which is to discuss the FY23 supplementals and reduction proposals. Okay, so starting with reductions, as all of you are familiar, each year the city, through the budget process, requires all departments and entities the city funds to submit a reduction target and how they will meet that. This year is one of the lowest I've seen in my time here at Dash. I actually attended the budget retreat last weekend and spoke briefly to City Council on our commitment to be a partner with them as they move through the budget process. But the allocation requirement, the number that we've been given is a 2.5 reduction, which amounts to a broken out amount of $486,219 for what we state as Dash, but that would be general routes and services, and $22,492 reduction for the trolley service. We're addressing this as one combined amount, and frankly, there really isn't any meaningful or appropriate way to adjust the trolley in that small amount of money. So the service reduction scenarios are presented again in your packet, but I'll outline them here. And that is a reduction in weekday peak services on lines 104, 102, and 103. Each of those maintaining at least a 60-minute interval or frequency as compared to a 30-minute peak frequency as they see today. Further, lines 32, 33, and 34 would be shortened or discontinued and select evening trips on weekdays and weekends. These would be affecting trips only with the lowest passenger impact and as determined by our planning department. This is all I have to say about the reduction option. I'm going to let Martin add to anything here that I may not have covered, and then we'll open it up for questions. I would just say that we are committed to submitting a meaningful reduction that has the least impact on our riders and our service as possible. And we understand the expectation of the city to submit this, but we will state, and I will state again here in the next few minutes, that we believe that the priority among any other priority should be to avoid any reductions or cuts. So Martin, if you'd like to add anything, if I've missed any highlights that you think would be helpful to explain here. I'm going to throw the table up here on the screen and let you explain this, Martin.
Thanks, Josh. I think you hit the nail on the head with that last point. This is our top priority, is to avoid these. We've just introduced a new network 2 months ago. We're trying to build ridership. We've identified priorities for service improvement through the new Dash network and ATV. So this would be a big step backwards from those goals. These services were identified for potential reduction just based on minimizing the impact that they would have on passengers and on the function of the overall new Dash network. Again, these are things that we really would like to avoid, but we did we needed to include them. They are listed here in order of how the reduction would be made if it came to this. 104 being the first one that would be offered up for potential reduction, and these again are based on ridership impact and some other operational considerations. So that's all I'll say on that, and we're really hoping that it does not come to this.
I thank you, Martin, for that, and Josh as well for that context, because this is an exercise that often gives us a lot of anxiety and heartburn, because we have to send these up to the manager to consider. I think that I take some comfort in the fact that it is a much lower reduction number than we faced in the past, and that we're also doing some supplementals, some very exciting things. I do think it's important that, for the manager to understand as they're putting the budget together of what, we would need to cut and to kind of have ownership and accountability, and for the community as well, those who are present on the meeting, to understand kind of where we would go in the event that we did have to deal with a lower subsidy number, because this gives folks a lot of notice to understand, in the event that there are reductions for groups that want to lobby to keep service, to understand. And this is not by any means anything that we have to do yet, because we won't receive our number until the spring. But transparency with the community and this kind of messaging is I think really important, so people understand kind of where we would go and what we would do, and the community can identify what their priorities are.
I agree, and thank you for stating that, Mr. Chair. I have a lot of optimism about the coming year, and can feel some energy and excitement about maybe accomplishing some important things in the coming year, including for Dash. So we will advocate and keep the board fully informed as the process moves forward. This is the very early submittal of the process, and then there will be multiple conversations and meetings going on over the next several months. And if there's any inclination that a reduction is taken, which has not been taken in the past couple of years for Dash largely, maybe a small little bit piece here and there, but it's really never been as substantial as requested, we would alert you immediately.
Do you want to vote on the supplementals along with the reductions, or do you want separate votes on each?
If it's okay, we can approve them all as a packet. If there is any concerns about the supplementals or the priority of the supplementals, then maybe I would ask Mr. Chair that when we get ready to move, that we would break them apart. But maybe we can just kind of see where we are once we finish.
All right, yep, keep going then.
So moving on to the supplementals, this is our opportunity to express to the city leadership, the city manager's office, what are the things that Dash needs to not only maintain, but also to expand and enhance our services, and to make sure we're serving the community in the best possible way. As I mentioned here previously, and I will mention here again on this slide, we are very much wanting to make it clear that the number one priority before any supplementals are even considered is to ensure that there are no service reductions. So in my proposal submittal to the board, I identify that as the top priority among any others and above any other supplemental requests or prioritizations thereafter. So I just wanted to state that there. The first supplemental of several, and we're going in order here, and I will mention to the board that as we go through this, if there is a desire of the board to reconsider the prioritization of these, that's certainly something that I'm more than welcome to discuss. But in prioritization order, the first supplemental is a staffing supplemental. We have not submitted a staffing supplemental in the time that I've been here at Dash. Our organization has grown incrementally in some ways, primarily on the front lines, and in ways to ensure that we are meeting the service demands on the street. This supplemental serves to really catch up some of the major supporting functions within the administrative side of the organization, to not only support the level of service we have on the ground today, but as we are continuing to expand the service, as we're continuing to see the demands from the community on our services, and to ensure that the staff who work day in and day out behind the scenes to support the front line, the drivers who are out there every day and keeping the buses on the road, are adequately equipped to ensure that we maintain our state of good repair, that we are supporting our technology in an effective and meaningful way that not only addresses current but future needs, to ensure that our safety program is not only compliant with today's requirements but future, particularly as we consider federal funds and the implications that federal funds have from a regulatory impact on our safety program, to consider the increased demand on our training programs, specifically as it relates to onboarding and recruitment, As we grow the service and as we continue to battle what everyone is battling right now, which is a tight labor market and the need to ensure that we're meeting the staffing requirements, but also to ensure on a training perspective that we are retraining and providing the in-house training that is important to ensure that those individuals who may have been working for Dash for the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years are receiving the regular training updates that they are expecting and that is obligated to them by the company and under the requirements of their licensing. And then finally here on the operations side of things, to ensure that the operations department is adequately staffed to support the current levels of service that we put on the road. Now, I've not created 16 different slides here to outline each of these individual positions, but I will point you to the board packet where I have provided some detail as to what these positions encompass. But what I wanted to assure the board is that these are really very specifically positions that are intended to support the frontline operations and to ensure that we are adequate on our compliance and safety and training side. Considering the growth, we now have over 240 employees. We're operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So I just want to pause there and allow questions so that I can help the board to understand anything that you would like to know about the specific request here and what any of these positions might do. Matt, your
Josh, I hate to keep asking questions. What about mechanics for the electric buses so the heavy maintenance doesn't need to be outsourced?
So the two maintenance positions here are mechanics. They are overnight and daytime mechanics to staff us to the appropriate levels. On the training side, one of our goals is to bring our training program up to support the maintenance side of things, but also as you referred to the electric bus training, we have some money programmed through the bus purchases to train existing technicians on safety and servicing these vehicles. As you probably are aware, they are very dangerous. They have high voltage. So we have a limited number of people that we allow to work on them. But as we continue to move throughout the coming year or two, we're going to utilize a lot of that training, those training hours that we have available for the staff, that both the current staff and these two new positions that would be supporting the fleet.
It's been an issue I've been dealing with across the country on the transition. And apparently like diesel mechanics and electric mechanics have a lot of differences on how they approach things. And I just would like to hope that we preserve the work within Dash and have our own mechanics capable of maintaining the electric buses as well as the diesel, which is obviously going to phase out. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a priority of mine and our director of maintenance, John Lanoka, who many of you are familiar with, has been prioritizing that as long as he's been at Dash. Because historically, prior to that, we did outsource a lot of our work. And to your point, Dash not only saves a lot of money by keeping it in-house, but ensures that the quality of the work performed is to our expectations. So, Hillary was the next hand I saw.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Josh, for this presentation. So I get my question is kind of similar to Matt. So I guess I'm just trying to understand with maintenance, if we have funds to train in-house staff, and I understand that electric vehicles are very different, but if we have funds to do that, and in theory, electric buses require less maintenance, and that's where we're going, I guess I don't understand the full need for two full positions that would stay with Dash, but even as our maintenance needs decrease.
So that's a good question. One of these positions is actually specifically labeled as a nighttime mechanic, and we only currently have one technician who works at night, overnight. So we are stretched pretty thin as it exists now. And one of the biggest things that we had to change was to switch to a 24-hour maintenance program. Prior to the launch of the new network, we only had 2 shifts, which meant the maintenance department shut down at night. And the reality is that we need to keep working all night long. So we are moving towards a 24-hour maintenance program because the fleet is not on the road, particularly between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m. And that's the time under which a number of the preventative maintenance repairs, the large, big, heavy-duty maintenance repairs that require multiple hands, are kept for the day shift, but the ongoing preventative maintenance. So that's one of these. The other position may or may not be during the day. Frankly, it depends on how the work is cut. But fundamentally, it is addressing our shortage in the number of technicians to support the fleet. We're now over 100 buses, and we're expecting that number to continue growing as the fleet grows relative to additional service. But I do feel quite strongly that we are understaffed in a number of ways. And so when we have people out sick, we have people who are on vacation, those kinds of things, we are seeing that hamper the productivity and the ability of the maintenance department to keep up with the fleet requirements.
So just as a follow-up, so I get that makes a lot of sense. I think, as night jobs probably are not as desirable, but does it make sense to shift more of the existing staff positions and do more robust work during the night, since the buses are out more during the day with the new Dash network and having more frequency? They're just not in the yard. So is there a way to shift schedules at all so that you can get more of the work done during that night shift?
I think there may be opportunity there, and I think that may be something that we've already been looking at. But I certainly can make that an expectation that we analyze our shifts and certainly can come back to the board to talk a little bit about kind of how that's structured and the fleet relative to the staffing, if that would be helpful.
And just one more question on the training positions. Those are not training positions that could be contracted for less money. Is there a full-time need for 2 more?
So I guess conceivably you could contract a training position, but these are trainers who are working with operators on anything from orienting them how to learn how to drive a bus, but more so these 2 positions are dedicated to retraining, follow-up from disciplinary, follow-up from post-accident, following up with post-incident issues also within maintenance. So if we have an incident that is flagged by our safety department, which is now supporting not only operations but also the maintenance department, and they are handling all OSHA related matters. So they're gonna set requirements for retraining or specialized work with individuals, be it an operator or a mechanic, in follow-up. And so these are very specifically positions that are dedicated to that. The existing training staff pretty much spends their entire time on new staff, onboarding, training, and they also spend a lot of time on annual, regularly scheduled training. So kind of breaking that out, you have what does it take to start doing your job? What do we routinely do to help make sure that you're performing as expected? And then finally, what do we do in response to what happens? And we've really beefed up that what is the response to what happens, and that's where these resources are dedicated. Steve.
Yes, thank you, Josh. As I understand, these maintenance positions, you mentioned that the target for one of these would be for night operations?
Yes, that's correct. At least one of them is tagged for night. Okay. One of them is tagged for day. But certainly, the maintenance department builds and bids out their work. So it's hard to know whether the specific individual would bid that work or not.
Okay, because the basis of my question is, as we're moving towards an electric fleet, the technology on board the equipment is going to be considerably different than what the maintenance staff has traditionally dealt with as a diesel mechanic working on a traditional diesel bus. Granted, we have a hybrid technology currently, but are we looking to look for skill sets for these two individuals that might be more traditionally aligned with that of an electrician or electronic technician?
So I would say right now, we have historically been recruiting for mechanics. We have largely looked for mechanics who have experience with hybrid vehicles, since still half of our fleet, more than half of our fleet, is composed of hybrid diesel electric vehicles. It's such a new market, particularly on the transit side, that there really isn't anyone, with the exception of the individuals who work directly for the manufacturers, who are really specifically coming in, as I'm an electric bus expert, which is where, in my eyes, when we've got our department staffed where we need it to be, that's where our investment from the manufacturer training programs that are going to come in and help to teach these very specific technical skill sets would come into play. I would love to hire someone who, to your point, maybe carries that background. And maybe that's a possible angle, and I would certainly take that back to our maintenance team as they consider the recruitment, but I'm not confident enough to answer your question to say that specifically that would be how we would recruit these. I know that historically we have recruited them as mechanics, as is defined by the position as general mechanic, or we have mechanic levels, really, which is sort of skill set levels.
Okay, and follow up on what Matt was discussing earlier, the ability to provide additional training for the existing staff so they can acquire the skill set necessary to maintain the equipment. Would these two training positions be focused on one for operator training and one for maintenance training, or how do you see you assigning these training responsibilities?
So as exists today, we don't delineate the two. So the training department has the responsibility for all of the organization's training, whether it be maintenance or operations or a combination of both. Historically, the training program has been almost entirely dedicated to bus operators and operations, and has pretty much consumed the entirety of their resources. So I would like to see that happen. And I certainly have heard the feedback today, and I agree with it. So, if these are approved, then I can work internally with staff on the classification of these and look to the dedication of the maintenance side. But again, I think that's just been a historical kind of issue. It is not, I think, indicative of where we need to be or where we intend to go when we are fully staffed. It's really just been historically how we've treated it.
Okay. Because if we want to retain, particularly our maintenance staff, and they're very difficult to both acquire and keep as employees from my transit experience, I think it's important that we consider a strategic approach to training in the new technology of our existing staff so that we can be the employer of choice and we don't wind up being in a situation that I was in back in the 90s where once we trained a person in the electronic technology for diesel electric locomotives, they left and went to another company. And I was, training 4 times for one vacancy. And if we can maintain or enhance the skill set of our existing employees, the ability to retain them and have them be productive in this new environment of the electric bus, I think would be to our advantage. And ultimately, in the long term, reduce operating expenses as we're not training 2 to 3 people for every vacancy.
Absolutely. Understood. And I would just mention that I received a message from Raymond, our assistant general manager, who works very heavily on the bus acquisition side and has a lot of knowledge on the manufacturer OEM training, that he has some information that he can bring back to the board. So I'd like to propose, based on the number of questions we received today, that at a future meeting, I would bring back a report from me and or him that would detail a little bit about how we're going to approach the electric bus skill set training and certification process internal to Dash, if that would please you and the board as far as the questions that you've addressed tonight.
I'll leave that up to the chairman. Again, I don't want to micromanage the situation, but I would like to try to raise these as strategic questions so that as you make informed decisions with regard to acquiring the new, both the training positions and the maintenance positions, that we look towards enhancing the existing skill set to the extent that we can, given the technology shift that we're dealing with here.
Very appropriate discussion and something that I would like to learn more about as well. And I appreciate those of you who have industry experience who can raise these questions.
Yeah, and I appreciate the questions and understand them. So I would say that I appreciate your comment, Steve, also about not getting in the weeds. So how about if we we'll bring back something that gives a synopsis for the board and helps you all to understand the approach here. I think it is a relevant thing and it's important for the board to be aware of. So I'm very comfortable bringing that back, and we'll make a note to do so in my report in the next meeting or two.
Thank you, Josh.
Absolutely. All right. I don't see any other hands up. So I was going to go through all of these supplementals, and then towards the end we can discuss if there's any desire to adopt them or amend them as the board sees fit. The next supplemental is titled Service Reliability. On a very simple level, what this supplemental is intended to do is to support the network with some additional standby or stage buses. We've gotten some feedback since the launch of the new network, and particularly since traffic has returned to levels pre-pandemic or worse, that throughout the day we are struggling with some service reliability issues on certain routes, particularly around the time that school is in session or coming into session or getting out of session. The intent of this request is to fund some additional drivers who would be on standby out in the field to complete trips that are missed or anticipated to be missed by drivers who have gotten too far behind schedule to catch up. It serves two purposes. One, in my eyes, it ensures the reliability of our timetable and the schedule we're committing to, but it also helps to provide a safety component that relieves some of the pressure on an individual driver. I know that myself as a bus operator starting out, some of the times I would find myself 15, 20 minutes behind schedule. It felt like a very daunting experience to try to find a way to catch up with that, and certainly could be inclined to try to speed or cut corners to make that happen. So these individuals would step in, they would be dispatched by our operations center to ensure that the trip is completed. And the driver who is very far behind schedule or otherwise maybe have an overloaded bus or something like that would then be set to the side to wait out and catch back up with the schedule. So that's fundamentally what this is speaking to when you talk about a stage or a standby bus. Supplemental number 3. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just a question on that. I mean, we have some of that now. This isn't brand new. It's just increasing the number of buses that we have throughout the day that can assist with this.
As far as I know, Martin, if you'd like to weigh in, since this is something your department works very closely with.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. So we do have a limited number of standbys, but they're not built in on a regular basis. They're kind of at the discretion of operations when they have the manpower and the buses to do so. This would kind of have a more consistent availability of these staged standby buses. So this would kind of reassure and reaffirm that the resources would be available.
Josh, what does this $870,000 represent?
I'll let Martin. Sorry, Martin, go ahead.
Sure. That's 2 standby buses that'll be available all day on weekdays, and then 1 standby on Saturday and Sundays. So just having those buses available for operations to use. I also just might note that we've, in the past couple of years, there's been a shift in the operations team to more active involvement in the service management. They've got a brand new operations control center that's being set up right now. They're moving towards a more active service management model. So this would be a resource that they can use towards that as they work to make sure that service is running smoothly.
Does that help answer your question, Matt?
I don't know. I mean, they're not extra buses. They're not buses we don't already own and operate, right? Is it to have another bus driver on standby, mechanic and support for that one bus or 2 buses?
Yes, I'm sorry. These are the operating costs. So basically, it's the same cost as if you were to run 2 extra buses on a route, but just they're sitting out in the field and not necessarily running until they're needed.
Okay, yeah, that helps. Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Okay, the third supplemental here is specific to the ATV. This is in follow-up to the launch of the new network. This is a proposal to implement most of the remaining service recommendations from the final 2022 ATV, as was adopted by the board in 2019. And I'm going to let Martin speak to the details of these, but these proposed improvements, we do have a table that shows these. They increase the frequency of the Old Town Circulator service. They add additional direct trips into Old Town from the Duke Street and King Street corridors on lines 30 and 31. They increase bus service to the new Potomac Yard Metro rail station with a realignment of line 34 and weekend frequency improvements on lines 33 and 34, and the off-peak service improvements on line 32 that will benefit the bus riders on the Eisenhower Avenue corridor. I'll note down here at the bottom, there are some weekday peak improvements scheduled for the lines 32, 103, and 104 that were a part of the 2022 plan, but they're not included because we simply don't have the fleet to support them. So these services are funding the cost to operate, but they recognize that we already have vehicles available to perform this service. But there are some enhancements that are scheduled if someone were to compare directly of what this is compared to the ATV that are absent. So Martin, I'll let you add to that. I'll put this table up here. It's a little hard to see probably on the PowerPoint, but it is included in your board packet, and that is on page 18. And it outlines in order these supplementals. So Martin, do you want to speak to this and explain a little bit to the audience what they're seeing here?
Yes, and thanks, Josh. And I would recommend that, yeah, if you want to look at this table, use the one that's in the packet. It'll probably be a little easier to read. But this is supplemental number 3, or yes, number 3 is what it's labeled as in the packet. And Josh, you did a good job of covering the high level summary. We're trying to improve connectivity in Old Town on 30 and 31. This was the last thing that was left out of the new Dash network launch. And really this is a critical improvement to the overall function of the network, not just on these routes, but for other people on other routes, because these routes are kind of the spines of the transit system coming from east to west, from West End to Old Town. And so there are trips now, especially in the off-peak periods, that have to actually stop at King Street Metro and turn back instead of continuing on to Braddock Road. And this would just make sure that all the trips are continuing into Braddock, into Old Town. So you're reducing the need for transfers, which have caused some concerns among customers, as we've heard. So that's really important to the overall function of the network, the 30 and 31 improvements, the first 2 that we have listed here. The next couple are related to Potomac Yard Metro. We want to support transit access to the Potomac Yard Metro. And then the remaining items are mostly off-peak improvements, particularly on Sundays. We still have a couple routes that run hourly on Sundays. So we're really trying to get those routes up to at least 30 minutes, which is a much more useful standard during those off-peak periods. So those are kind of the gist of what we're trying to do with this particular submittal.
Martin, can I ask a question, and to Josh as well, in understanding how you prioritize these? So this is a lower priority than the stage buses, but if this were to be implemented, it is a higher cost than the stage buses, but wouldn't that obviate some of the need for the stage buses because you'd be providing more frequent service on some of these routes?
So it's a good question, Mr. Chair. The stage buses are really geared towards the service that we have out on the streets today and supporting that service. So this would be sort of above and beyond. The frequency additions I don't think will have too much of an impact on the need for standby buses because we're always going to run into service disruptions. We're always going to have, situations where the buses are potentially overcrowded, or there's a bus breakdown, we need to do a bus exchange. I think that the need for those standby buses will always be there. So that's why we're trying to protect and support our existing service levels before adding on with these additional requests. So that's why the prioritization is the way it is.
Yeah, so assuming that nothing were to change, the standby buses helps to enhance and address the service that's currently on the road. Martin put it very well. So the last item here is regarding Duke Street, the Duke Street corridor. This is something that's actually been brought up previously. I'm not sure if it was brought up here on the board, but I know that we've had some council members ask about this. And that is related to the service that was planned for the Duke Street corridor to run every 15 minutes or better, 7 days a week, and improving the east-west connectivity between South Van Dorn, Landmark, Duke Street, and Old Town. This is one of the most productive transit corridors, and it is included in the 2022 ATV, but the funding constraints precluded that line from being improved as part of the frequent all-day bus network. These obviously have the largest price tags, and certainly we recognize that the likelihood of all of these being funded is very low and potentially, but I think quite frankly, one of the important things here is to vocalize this and make sure that it's known what these needs are. Not only the first two to support current services, but the second, the third, and the fourth to recognize where the ATV calls for us to be making service improvements. My approach to this, as we would work through the budgetary process, is to ensure that we're an active part of the conversation in all areas to explain why these are there, what the options are pertaining to them. This is not a all or nothing kind of thing. We really try to, both on the reductions and the supplementals, to create a menu in the event that there's opportunity out there to address them. But again, as it's a supplemental request process, I would just be transparent with the board and anyone listening that these are things that we recognize could not be. It is potential that they could be unable to be funded in the budget, and we as staff recognize that and just feel it's an important obligation to be putting them out there and put them forward for consideration if it's possible now or in the future.
And Josh, to that point, if members of council are inquiring about this service, and certainly there's an argument to be made that the Duke Street improvements are very important as we consider, the potential for the BRT and how that will be structured. You need to build up demand, just as we were doing on what will become the West End Transit Way and some of the grants that we received. So, I think this is well worth including. Any other comments from colleagues about the supplementals? So there was the question raised about how we would proceed in voting on these, as to whether we would divide the reductions from the supplementals or pull. We can also pull any individual supplementals if any board members would like to do that. So if I could just understand we would assume we would vote on all of them together, but if anyone wants to go in a different direction, please let me know now. I'm not hearing from anyone, so I will ask if there is a motion on the 23 reductions and supplementals as submitted by staff.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board consider for adoption the supplementals as presented by staff.
Moved by Steve. Okay. Was that Jim?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Thank you. We are now at the end of our meeting. There's one item that I just want to very briefly discuss because Josh, you and I had some discussion about it, just so board members are aware of it. Onboarding for new council members, and perhaps Hillary, if you want to jump in as well, can you speak to Dash's role in that and how we will be acclimating our new elected officials?
So yes, there are new council briefings that have been set up in November, and previously, I believe, Josh, you were in some of those meetings. I believe you will be in them again. They're very, very high level. These there's so much information, so we do keep it very, very high level. I know on our side we're going to be focusing on key projects, which mainly do through DRT. In those corridors, and that's really, and they're trying to keep it focused on one or two high-level projects because they are provided a great deal of information in these briefings, but they are set up for later this month.
Yeah, and thank you, Hillary. Sorry, I was going to try to jump in there. I did actually get some information and updates about these today, and Mr. Chair, this is an item that I was going to follow up with you separately. The meetings actually that I'm going to be a part of seem to be confirmed for the 6th and 8th of December. They were pushed back a little bit. The 8th actually is the date of our next board meeting. It is scheduled, the new council orientation is scheduled to start at 5 p.m. that day. So it is very, very possible that assuming I was able to go first, that I could present and then come straight over to the board meeting. I don't know, Hillary, whether you'll be also on those same ones, the same date. I think TNES is mentioned there, but Mr. Chair, I would offer that we would continue to look at that from a scheduling perspective and then circle back with you, and Beth could work with the board if necessary, if we need to tweak that a little bit. We do recognize the importance of this opportunity to fill in the new council members about what's going on. So we certainly wouldn't want to miss that, but it is possible we can make it all work as is. But I have received the meeting invitations and notices for those.
Okay. I mean, it is very.
Your dates are probably more correct.
It is very important that Dash fully participate in those. So you may want to just go ahead and do a doodle poll or something with some alternate dates and see if there's something that works. And that way we have that in our pocket if need be. Because yeah, we want to make sure that we can facilitate anyone who needs to be a part of that. And we're also inviting them, Josh, to tour the Dash. We're going to send a letter to them, which I don't believe has gone out yet, inviting any council members who would like to come have a more in-depth briefing and a tour of the Dash facility as well. Something
correct, and I think we'll typically do that after they're seated.
Okay.
But certainly, definitely want to do that and make sure that they have an opportunity to see what we're doing.
All right, thanks. And one other item very quickly for clarity. I was handed a copy of a letter for the Dash Fair Fee framework. We have to sign. We have already passed this framework, so I will just be signing a cover memo that is going to submit that to the members of council and the manager. That we don't need to vote on the cover memo. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I will go ahead and sign that. Does anyone else have any business items for tonight? Okay. If not, meeting is tentatively set for December 8th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. on Zoom. And I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, Ian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Everybody.
Good night. Thank you.